everyone, this is Steve Bishop from ProgrammingMadeEasy.com and of course, Gartman Technical Services. So today I've got another In My Opinion video for you guys. And again, these are videos designed for you guys to ask me whatever kind of questions that you want. So if you have a question that you would like to ask me, please feel free to drop me a comment in the comment section below this video with your question. And if it's a good one and I've got time to get to it, I will add it to the list of questions and I will certainly get to it. So please keep sending me those questions. I really need them because obviously without your questions, I don't have anything to make a video about. So today's question comes from Hader Al Delphi, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly there, Hader. If I didn't, please let me know. I always like to know, correction on pronunciation of names. So please, if I got it wrong, just, drop me a line in the comment section to let me know. So Hader's question is, he says, a proposal for a future In My Opinion video. Would you use a client-side framework like Angular 2, Knockout, or React to integrate with an ASP.NET Core Web API, or would you use ASP.NET MVC with jQuery, Bootstrap, etc.? I am currently using Bootstrap, jQuery, and Ajax on top of what you showed us so far on .NET Core, and it seems to work just fine, but it feels like there must be a quicker way of doing things. Well, Hader, thank you again, first of all, for the question. I really appreciate it. It's a really good question. I think a lot of people are probably asking this very same thing when they're looking at a new project that they want to develop. They're trying to figure out, what are the different frameworks we're going to use. And so this is a pretty critical question to be asking. And I would say that it really kind of depends. And I know that kind of sounds like a cop-out, but there's a couple things that you have to consider here. First of all, the environment that you're going to be deploying this application to. Are you working inside of an enterprise scenario where your IT department, or maybe you, have direct control over the browsers that are going to be coming to your application? Are you able to ensure that they are updated and that they have they're the latest browser versions and that they have JavaScript running and that they can handle those other type of JavaScript frameworks? If that's the case, then it sure does make sense to go ahead and have the client side do all of this logic and use its CPU and its memory in order to do some of those basic tasks. And that means that the overall experience for everybody is going to be faster because the logic is handling on the client side instead of waiting for the server to think about it and then respond. And also the workload on the server itself is a lot less because all it has to really do is just respond to requests, right? It doesn't have to do any of this special extra logic behind in order to figure out and drop in the different components into a view. So I can certainly see where that's probably a really good scenario where if you're in an enterprise situation where you have full control over the browsers that are coming to your application, it makes total sense to be deploying, something like Angular 2 or Knockout or React or Vue is another one that's out there. To be able to use those type of frameworks. It's really, really helpful and it makes things go faster. But if you are not in that kind of control, you don't have that much control over the browsers that are coming to your site, to your web application. And I would also toss this in as a consideration. What about mobile? Maybe you've got mobile phones that are coming that may not have all of the JavaScript capabilities to it in those browsers. And, I even have my watch here, and my watch has a browser on it, and I can't go to a lot of the websites because, they have JavaScript type of stuff that's real heavy, and my little watch browser is not going to be able to handle that kind of thing. So if that's kind of your audience, if your audience is kind of unknown and they could be coming to you with like Internet Explorer 7 or 8 or something like that, God forbid they do. But if there's the potential that that could happen, you have to program for that. That means you have to kind of tell them, sorry, you can't view this page because you don't have everything up to date. Or you might even just run into errors and they come to your page and they think it doesn't work and then they think you suck, right? We don't really want that kind of situation if we can avoid it. So typically, if it's a more public type of facing application, I err more on the side of doing things on the server side. And if I need my server to be beefier, I'll just spend the money to get it beefier, right? And let it do those things, as well as some asynchronous strategies, coding your applications to be more asynchronous so that it can handle more of those requests faster. And I know we haven't really gone into asynchronous in my ASP.NET Core series. It's kind of a bit of a topic that's pretty heavy, and I may not really be able to get into it into the Core series. But if you can, go learn about how to do the asynchronous stuff in your MVC Core applications, because it will make your applications respond faster. It'll be able to handle multiple requests simultaneously, which is always really good. That speeds up everybody's experience. So I would say if you don't have that kind of control, like you would in an enterprise situation, you don't really know what browsers are coming to you, it makes sense to have more of the processing happening on the server side, because all it needs to do is, use the Razor syntax to figure out where am I going to put the little different model, values into the view, and then it spits out the view to the browser. And as long as the browser can read HTML, it's going to be able to read what MVC spat out. So that's really kind of where you have to make this decision. Am I building an application for an environment where I have good control over the browser, or do I have a situation where I don't really have that much control over the browsers that are coming to the page? And then if I don't have it, but I still want to use one of those frameworks, I have to develop a strategy to manage those situations where it's an outlier and those browsers don't have that capability. So I need something like, Modernizer or something like that to compile the ES6 or, soon to be ES7 stuff into, one of the ES5 type of languages, so it can be, better capable with some of the other browsers. So those are just some of the different considerations that you have to think about when you're planning on this deployment. And there's one other thing that I would point out, and that is typically, unless you're really, really good at securing it and thinking about things all the way through, web APIs kind of open you up to, I should say, if you're using just a web API with one of these frameworks that you're pushing out, you are kind of exposing yourself a little bit in a couple of different key ways. Number one, you're publishing out the code that you wrote as source code that is visible to anybody who's opening it, right? So you might spend a lot of time building this application, and you're essentially spitting out your source code to all these different people who could just take that and use it for their own purposes. And maybe you've got some intellectual property rights that you want to consider with that you don't really have that good of control over. You can't really intellectualize the JavaScript code that goes out there. But if you're doing it all on the server side, you don't have to worry about that, because you're not exposing the code to the user. You're doing all of the functionality on the users on the server side. So all your code is processing on the server, and then it just spits out the HTML, and the user doesn't actually see the processing logic that goes behind it. And there wouldn't be any real harm, and there's no real proprietary type of things going on that you have to worry about. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when you do this API and you send out a client framework, like a JavaScript client framework, not only will they have that source code, but they'll be able to open it up and look at it. And if they're really smart and they understand JavaScript really well and they understand the framework, then you are giving them basically, I'm not going to say the keys to the kingdom, but a really smart person. And if you don't lock down your API really, really well, they might be able to do some injection of things. They might be able to start, making modifications to the data that's on your side without you really wanting them to. So you do have a little bit of exposure. Now, there are ways to mitigate that. There's ways of locking down your API so that it's not really, it's very difficult to do that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it's impossible. I don't think I hesitate to ever say anything is impossible, but you can get it to pretty well darn near impossible if you just have the right practices and strategies and you think about everything that might go wrong with it. But, we're human and we tend to make mistakes and we tend to open ourselves up to vulnerabilities. And just think, you're handing this source code, the JavaScript source code, to an unknown person, and they may be smarter than you, and they may be able to figure out how that code works, and they may be able to figure out how your API works and be able to deconstruct it in some way and inject different pieces of information that you don't want them to, and they could gain access to your systems and that sort of thing. So it's just another consideration you have to take care of. Again, if you're in a really controlled environment, that's probably not that big of an issue, right? If you're in a small little enterprise system or even a big business enterprise and you've got really good strict control over the different people that are coming to your application, then obviously those kinds of concerns are a lot less. But if you are exposing this API out to the public and you're sending out your source code to all these different people, you do have some security concerns that you really, really have to pay attention to. So I would just think about all that. There's a lot going in there. But I guess what it really kind of breaks down to, what it boils down to is, do you have control over the clients that are using your application? If so, knock yourself out. Send out those JavaScript frameworks. Use them all to your heart's content so that you can get the workload off of the server and put it on those client computers. But if you don't have that much control over it, then by default, I just say try to do more stuff on the server side. If you need faster processing, then try to figure out better strategies for doing asynchronous calls instead of doing the synchronous ones, as well as you can beef up your server, get more memory, better CPUs, that sort of thing. And you can also do clusters and failovers and that sort of stuff. So that is kind of where I'm coming from. That's what I think. That's my advice to you. So Hater, I hope I have answered your question. If I didn't and you have some follow-up questions, please feel free again to drop me those questions in the comment section below this video. And if anybody else has any follow-up questions, if this has sparked some other question that you'd like to ask me, please again feel free to drop me that comment in the comment section. So I hope that this has enlightened some of you guys. If you did like it, please hit that thumbs up button so that I know you like this video. And don't forget to add this video as a favorite and subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified whenever I have a new video. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and until the next video, I can't wait to see you then. Bye-bye.